Yeah, well, yeah, come right to the, yeah.
Oh, I can start? Okay. Am I good? Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. On behalf of the Everett Public Schools, I want to thank Governor Baker and Secretary Pizer for being here today to join us as we prepare for the upcoming school year. I also want to thank Mayor DiMaria and his staff for all of their support, as well as the Cambridge Health Alliance and Tufts Health Plan for helping us organize today's Back to School Bash and our vaccine clinic. So we are filled with so much optimism about starting this upcoming school year, especially since we all get to be back in person again. However, we do know how critical the role of the vaccine plays in being able to have all of our students back. And so we are very excited to be able to offer several different opportunities for our students. And so we have a back to school bash today as kind of a final push right before school starts to make sure that our students are getting vaccinated. We're actually headed in a great direction right now. The DESE, the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, has actually set 80% as the number that we need to reach in order to potentially reconsider our universal mask mandate. So we are well on our way here in Everett. We are at 74% for our 16 to 19-year-olds, and we are at 61% for our 12 to 15-year-olds. So again, we're so happy to be able to offer all of these opportunities to our families and to our residents, and we do encourage everyone to come out and get vaccinated. I will turn it over now to Mayor DiMaria.
Thank you, Superintendent Taliani, and I want to thank your administration and your staff for all the hard work during this last 2 years. I do have prepared remarks, but this is an easy subject to talk about. This all wouldn't have happened. These vaccine clinics, the amount of vaccines the city of Everett received, the support, the CARES funding, the additional funding, if it wasn't from the gentleman behind me. Governor Baker, Lieutenant Governor Polito, during the 18 months we're there. And I know Senator DiDomenico and Representative McGonigal can attest to it. When we needed vaccines, we needed additional CARES funding, we needed additional support. If it was getting on the phone with the secretaries, they were there for us. They supported us. They made it very easy. And so I just want to thank you, Governor, for your continued commitment, support to the city of Everett. Your early designation of designating Everett as one of the 20 communities, equity communities in the state because of the impacts of COVID had on our residents. They made sure, again, that we received the 10,000 doses, the ability to vaccinate 10,000 residents. So I love having someone. I've been in government for 28 years, served under a few different governors. When a mayor can pick up the phone and text him or the lieutenant governor and get immediate results, it's and that was before the pandemic. So I want to thank him for his friendship. I want to thank him for his commitment to residents. Thank him to knowing that people never relied on him, and he came through for all of us. So it's my honor, my pleasure to introduce someone who needs no introduction in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, nor in Everett. My friend, our friend, Governor Charlie Baker.
Well, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Those were the kinds of remarks that my dad would have liked and my mom would have believed. Much appreciated, and obviously, it goes without saying that the two folks on the bookends here, Representative McGonigal and Senator DiDomenico, are absolutely there always, advocating for and representing the interests of this community. And we have had many opportunities to work together over the course of the pandemic. And an announcement like today and an event like this is just one more opportunity to show what state and local government, with admittedly some help from the feds in terms of dollars, can do to make sure that their communities are doing all they can to be safe and to open successfully this school year. And I do want to thank the superintendent, Priya Tahilani. How's that? Is that close enough?
Maybe.
Maybe. Oh, geez. I want to thank Priya.
Thank you.
for hosting us here at Everett High School. And you don't get to a 74% vaccination rate for your 16 and 19-year-olds, a 61% vaccination rate for your 12 to 15-year-olds without having folks in the school system who are working this issue and working it hard. And I just want to thank you for that. And as I said earlier, we'll be there to do whatever we can to help you folks continue to make that progress as the school year begins and as we all move forward. The clinic itself looks like it's doing a few hundred cases a day. And in some cases, it's parents and kids who are coming to get vaccinated, which is in some respects a bonus that you get out of making a program like this available. If you can get the kids interested, maybe in some cases they can get their parents to come get vaccinated as well. And this is also a partnership between the City of Everett, the Public Health Department, and the Cambridge Health Alliance, who's been a terrific partner in so many ways on so many issues with us throughout the course of this pandemic. And at this point in time, we're working with well over 100 school districts to set up clinics to provide vaccines around the start of the new school year. And obviously, these clinics are going to make vaccines available to staff and eligible students, which are those 12 and older, but we're also going to run them for as long as there's demand. That will be obviously all the way through September and probably beyond. And we're going to do everything we can to make sure that we not only deliver on that first dose, but that we also make second doses available to people using a relatively similar and reasonably consistent process so that the second dose will get taken care of as well. I think in many ways, this is just one more example of us leading the nation when it comes to vaccines. We have the second highest vaccination rate in the country, behind Vermont. They have 750,000 people. We have 7.5 million. I love Governor Scott, but I'm constantly pointing out to him that we have a few more people to get vaccinated than he does. He points out to me that his people are much farther apart than mine. But the bottom line is we've gotten to the point here where about over 5 million people have gotten at least a first dose. That means over 5 million people are likely to be fully vaccinated at some point in the not-too-distant future here, because people in Massachusetts have been incredibly good about getting a second dose if they get a first dose. That means more and more of our residents every day are protected from the virus, more so than almost anywhere else in the country, and as a result, we have the second lowest hospitalization rate on a per capita basis in the country for COVID as well. And once again, it's Vermont that happens to be ahead of us. Can't wait to tell Governor Scott that I made sure to point out the success of the great state of Vermont in my remarks. These are clearly the best way to keep everybody safe here in the Commonwealth. Kids obviously are looking forward to being back in the classroom. Their teachers are looking forward to being able to work collaboratively and closely with them. I know the administrators and the folks in education generally are looking forward to the year, and it's going to be up to us to do all we can to make sure that everybody who's eligible to get vaccinated can get vaccinated so that everybody can have a school year that's a lot different than the one they had last year. In many respects, we also are starting with one of the highest youth vaccination rates across the Commonwealth and the country, with about 65% of our 12 to 15-year-olds being vaccinated, and a fairly similar percentage for our 16 and 19-year-olds as well. We obviously are anticipating that these clinics will help us continue to advance those numbers as we go forward, and we're looking forward to working with everybody to enhance and improve our performance on all of those measures. Ultimately, we think vaccines are the best way to keep kids safe as well and to keep our schools safe as well, and that's why we did set a precedent by establishing an 80% target for students and staff in a school building. Once they get to the point where they reach that target and can attest to it as of October 1st, districts will be able to make whatever decision they think makes the most sense in their particular district. As we all know, vaccines are only available at this point in time for students that are ages 12 and up. We're hopeful that federal officials, as they continue to review the clinical results, will move with urgency to make sure that vaccines, once they are demonstrated to be safe and effective for younger kids, will be made available to younger kids so that they too can get the protection that's being made available to those over the age of 12. To encourage vaccines for as many students and staff as we can, we're going to include in many of these clinics and these operations what we would refer to as vaccination incentives. Working with our administration, the Everett school and public health officials are distributing Stop and Shop gift cards to people getting vaccinated here at this clinic and in others across the city. The incentives are part of the administration's Vaccine Equity Initiative, and we're glad to have supplied these gift cards as one more tool to encourage people to get vaccinated. Everett's one of those communities that was identified as part of our Health Equity Initiative, and I appreciate the mayor recognizing that. But it's been a big piece of what we've been trying to do to encourage folks, especially in communities where it's a little harder for folks to necessarily get to where a lot of the vaccine locations may be available to get vaccinated. And early on in the rollout, we knew we needed to do things to make sure that those communities that have been hardest hit by COVID would have access to these types of programs. We've done a lot of pop-up clinics and a whole bunch of other initiatives as well, but also felt it was important to put some mechanisms in place, working with our colleagues at Archipelago Strategies Group, which is a really well-known community-based organization which specializes in doing grassroots outreach, especially in communities that have a multiple of languages that are spoken at home. And I think in many respects, as we move forward at this point in time, having knocked on somewhere in the vicinity of 500,000 doors around the Commonwealth and probably somewhere between 15 and 20,000 here in Everett, we will continue to find opportunities to make sure that people can access the vaccine, know where it's available, and we'll even make house calls to deliver it if people can't find a way to get to a vaccine clinic. And that's all part of our strategy of making sure that everybody and anybody who wants access to a vaccine can get one. It's the single best way we can keep our economy going. It's the single best way we can ensure that our kids and staff and teachers are safe and have a chance to experience a successful in-person educational experience this year. And I want to just say thank you to the mayor, to the superintendent, to the legislative delegation, the city council, and the rest of the folks who've been part of this program here in Everett. And we continue to look forward to working with you as we go forward to make sure that everybody who wants a dose can get a dose, and we can make sure that people here in Massachusetts are as safe as they can be as we move forward. With that, I'll turn it over to Secretary Pizer.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Superintendent, Mayor, Cambridge Health Alliance, everyone here in Everett for hosting us today for this important and exciting event. Last week, the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education granted Commissioner Riley the authority to require masks indoors in all public K-12 schools around the Commonwealth for students, educators, and staff. Through October 1, to ensure that schools can fully reopen safely and to provide time and opportunity for more students and educators to get vaccinated. After October 1, the mask policy allows middle and high schools to lift the mask mandate for vaccinated individuals if at least 80% of students and staff in the building are vaccinated, as the governor mentioned. A universal face covering policy at this time is designed to help ensure that we have a smooth opening of school without any confusion and ambiguity about the health protocols. The second and ultimately more important purpose is to reinforce the importance of vaccinations and to create incentives for school communities like Everett to get all their eligible students and staff vaccinated as soon as possible. And this kind of effort today and the kind of urgency and excitement around it is exactly what it's going to take. As the governor and all the state and national public health officials have said, the only way we're going to put COVID behind us is through vaccinations. Vaccination clinics like this one are critical to helping us get there, both in the school and in the wider community. Obviously, circumstances may change in the coming weeks, which may allow us to take a different course. But for now, the safest and simplest path forward is to mask up in schools and to do everything that we can to meet or exceed the 80% vaccination benchmark. Even as we are taking deliberate and reasonable steps to reopen schools, I want to reiterate what we have been saying for the past year or more. When basic protocols are being followed, schools are safe places for children and adults. All the data from Massachusetts and around the country, and indeed around the world, show clearly that COVID transmission in schools is very low, even in communities where overall COVID rates are high. The bottom line is that in-person learning is not only essential for student success academically and developmentally, but it is also safe for students and educators. And the best way to ensure a more fully normal experience, both in and out of school, is for everyone to get vaccinated. Again, thank you very much, and let me turn it back over to the governor.
You guys have questions for me or for any of the other folks that are up here?
Governor, how does it feel to walk into school, see kids actually coming into school and be ready to learn after about a year and a half?
You know, I did manage to make it in and out of a few schools last year, and found the sense of enthusiasm, and last year in particular, a certain sense of luck and gratitude. I mean, a number of the kids that I talked to in schools that were open last year, before most of them opened up in the spring, said that they had plenty of friends who weren't in school every day, and they were just really glad that they were. And I think one of the things that this whole past year, I think, has been a year in which many of us have had things that have happened that were awful and terrible and tragic, and there have been things that have happened that made us kind of grateful about one thing or another. And I really do think, based on my conversations with a lot of kids, and frankly a lot of parents too, they didn't really realize how much they missed in-person schooling until they didn't have it. And I think one of the best parts about this is it's very clear that Everett is doing everything they can to make this experience, as kids come back to school, for the adults and for the kids, as positive an experience as possible. But I would really like to hear what the superintendent has to say in answer to that question, Karen, because it's a good one.
So last week, we had our pre-K premiere, we had several different orientations, and it really was amazing to have kids back in school. Even when we did come back in person in the spring, you know, we only had a fraction of our students who chose to come back. So we were always running at about 50%. So it was so nice to just hear the noise, to hear the bustle. Even right now, you can see outside the students who are at the food trucks and the video gaming trucks. It's just nice to see them back, see them smiling, see them excited about coming back to school. And I don't think you really realize how different it is until you have been walking through a school building during a school year when it's silent. And I think that stark difference has been really evident to me over the past few weeks, and so we're just so happy to have our kids back.
We're on the eve of school starting in a lot of places, including here in Everett tomorrow. What's your biggest worry when we talk about kids back in school full-time going forward?
I guess my biggest worry would probably be fairly similar to what you'd hear from any of the folks who are up here, which is my biggest concern is, will everybody do all the things that we can do collectively and together to keep the students and the kids and the adults safe? We have about 2,000 schools plus or minus who have signed up so far for one or more of the testing programs that we've made available to school districts across the Commonwealth. I mean, I personally would like to see every school in Massachusetts participate in those programs. We ran them last year for about 1,000 schools, is that right? And it was an incredibly effective tool for schools to keep track of whatever was going on with respect to COVID, pre-vaccination among their students, and in some cases their staff as well. But in addition to that, it gave everybody the sense that every week we were doing something to create a surveillance measure that was measuring and testing and determining and kicking tires on every classroom and every kid and every adult about what was going on with COVID. I think that's and it's one of the reasons why we chose to make this thing available to any school district and any school that wants to take advantage of it this fall. I really do hope people, as the superintendent said, take advantage of the incentives that are being created here around getting vaccinated. We do have, I mean, for the 16 and 19-year-olds, I think we're almost 20 points ahead of the national average. And for the 12 to 15-year-olds, we're probably about 15 to 18 points ahead of the national average with respect to where folks are there. Again, I think this is in many ways, and I've said this many times, the safest thing we can do is to make sure that everybody who's eligible gets vaccinated. So I hope people take that seriously. And there are plenty of sort of protocols that have been developed that people had a chance to kick the tires on either during the course of last year or last spring when most people were open. And I hope people take advantage of those as well. I think if everybody does all those things, we should be able to have a safe opening, which I think is really the objective for all of us.
And this is a push today to get people vaccinated, but when we talk about kids in school, there's still a very large segment who are not eligible right now to be vaccinated that are going back to school. So what do we do for that age?
Well, that's a big part of the reason why the mask requirement is in place for those students who are unvaccinated. And I think the evidence we have from last year, for example, where there were no vaccines, but we had many schools, public, private, and parochial, that were open all year with masks and the kind of protocols we're talking about now, many of which also participated in the testing program. Most of them didn't miss a day with respect to COVID, including a lot of schools that were in districts where the case counts were really high at the same period of time. So I do think there are processes and protocols that can work here, but it's going to be incumbent on all of us to support one another and make sure we stick with them.
Are you any closer at all to instituting a mask mandate or a vaccination mandate for teachers and other school staff? I know that that's sort of becoming more common now that there's a federal authorization.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the first thing I would say to that is that we made a decision as an employer to incorporate a vaccine mandate for those state workers and contractors who work for the executive branch. And we did that because many of our employees do have fairly regular contact with the public and with each other. And we felt it was important for them and for the people we deal with every single day to incorporate a mandate and to basically send a message that we think as an employer this is important. Cities and towns have the primary relationship in Massachusetts with the school's employees, and I certainly would hope that most folks, especially since the teachers' unions have expressed an interest in supporting vaccinations for everybody in a school building, would be willing to engage in those discussions and see where they can go. But again, that is something that, you know, under state law and collective bargaining and everything else really does belong to the local level.
Governor, we're very proud of this, of all the strides that have been made, especially in Rapid Everett. We are very happy, especially in the Black community, and recently in Everett and around before, that the equitable access to the vaccine, not only in terms of when they are provided, where they are provided, is almost becoming a non-issue. So thank you for that. This is great. And thank you, Mr. Commissioner, for last, we need to protect our kids. The numbers are good, they're looking good. However, in terms of race, we're still at under 40% for the Black community. And we also have the population that travel out to specifically for Black community, because that's the population that I serve. The director of the Everett Community Center and associate pastor of the local church of Cambridge in Waltham. So we get to see firsthand. So we lost those to COVID, kids, families, and so it's a concern to us. So thank you for the more affordable access to the vaccine at times that we know that we advocate for it. What we see that can be contemplated for more progress is really collaboration for meaningful partnerships with all institutions that have the mandate to make sure that all the kids, everybody is safe. The school system, thank you for this, of course, municipalities, medical institutions, et cetera, et cetera. So we need to see that. We also need to see some type of more coordination as well with the entities, the media entities that receive money, funds, to help propagate the information, the communication. And thirdly, we need consistency in the information. We try to do our best, as partners, as advocates in the community, face to face. With all the good hearts, I know that, that have been looking to this, and also for the institutions. If you will go even in the entrance for registration, you'll see it in English, in Spanish, now in Portuguese. But not in the third most spoken language in the school, education. These are the little things, but they make a difference. So that means I have to even ask the person, because you know where to go. So it's the consistency that we need, and together, municipalities, health institutions, and of course, with the work that you started to do to make it this equitable access to us, that we can continue
First of all, thank you for your work and your support on these initiatives. We've had tremendous collaborations with a number of folks in the faith community that have made it possible for us to find trusted voices in communities across the Commonwealth that can help us deliver the message. Because you are absolutely right, there's an incredible amount of misinformation that's flying around out there, and we're constantly competing against it. We are always looking for opportunities to improve, and we have made, I think, significant strides, as you point out, especially around some of the issues with regard to language, and have tried pretty hard in neighborhoods where we've had folks knocking to make sure the folks who are knocking speak the languages of the people in those communities where they are door knocking. But any opportunity to get better is one we should take advantage of, and there's no question that we have work to do in the hardest hit communities, and that is where we're focusing a big part of our effort at this point and going forward, and we'll continue to do that. But you should ask the guy next to you to give you a card so that we can make sure we follow up with you and make sure we're doing everything we can in your community. Okay.
Talking about Hispanic, do you have somebody who speaks Spanish that can send a message to the Hispanic community, especially if we have a lot of Hispanics here in Everett?
I don't speak Spanish. I've always let Dan Rivera do it for me. He's much better.
So you please send a message to the Hispanic community here in Everett?
It's choppy, I mean, but I can do it. I'd rather have Marconi come up and say it in Spanish, but Oscar can come up and say it in Spanish. You want Oscar to give a message in Spanish to the Spanish community about getting vaccinated? Sure. Oscar, you want to do it?
Buenos días.
Sabe que le envías a toda la comunidad hispana de aquí de Everett que todavía no creen la vacuna del coronavirus.
Pues nosotros les queremos dar un mensaje muy personal diciendo que esta es la mejor manera de ayudar a toda la comunidad a abrir las escuelas, retirarse las máscaras, porque si no nos vacunamos no vamos a poder ayudar a la comunidad. ¿Algo más?
Last question.
Governor, I know you commented online, but I'm not sure you commented out loud yet on Senator Dario in Lawrence. I don't know if you would mind saying a few words.
Well, first of all, there are many communities, states, country who have suffered tragedy through the 20 years we've been in Afghanistan and Iraq, but the tragedy weighs most heavily on the families and loved ones of those who are lost, and I can't imagine what it must be like to be a family member of somebody who was on the ground at the so-called end of this process, when you think and start to believe that your family member is going to be coming home any minute now at the end of this ordeal, and to have them lost to a suicide bomber so far into the process. And I've spoken with the mayor in Lawrence and made clear to him that he had spoken with the family, and I made clear to him that if there's anything we can do to assist the family or the community with respect to the arrangements in the process going forward, we would do whatever we could to be helpful. But but I've had a number of opportunities over the course of the past 7 years to meet the families of some of these folks who have been lost in this war at the airport when their family member comes home for the last time. And I got 3 kids, and I can't imagine the pain and especially in this case, the sense of loss that someone would feel if they're related to any of those 13 people who were lost, or the 150 some odd Afghans that were lost to that bomb. And I guess all I can say is that we'll do whatever we can to help her family going forward. But there's no question that these people were selfless. There's no question that they were heroes, and there's no question that they and their fellow servicemen and women are among the very best of what this country has to offer. And we should always honor, always respect, and never forget the loss that they've incurred as a result of their service.
Thanks, everyone.
Say again? We've been in conversations with the feds about this, and it made clear to them that we'll be as helpful as we can be when we need to be. And they're currently going through their own process. Everybody who comes into this country has to go through a federal review of one type or another. But we and a number of the organizations that have historically been in this line of work have made clear to them that we stand ready to help them when asked.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody, and thanks again to Everett. Congratulations, folks.
Nice job.